Hello there, everybody. Welcome back to Ruck and Roll Rugby, where today we have the big one. I have selected my Lions 15 for the first test against South Africa this summer. But before we get into it, thank you ever so much for all the support you've been showing the channel lately. We are growing and growing day by day. But if you haven't yet subscribed, please make sure to do so. It costs absolutely nothing to do, and it helps to grow the channel and grow the community we have here at Ruck and Roll Rugby. So let's get into it and let's see how my Lions 15 shapes up. So where better to start than the front row? And I think the players I've selected for a purpose. So I've gone with Wyn Jones at loose head, Ken Owens at hooker, and Tad Furlong at tight head. Ultimately, the scrum is going to be a key battleground during this test series. And I think that ultimately Warren Gatland is going to want his best scrummages on the field at all times. A few interesting players that have missed out, but with the players that have been selected, I think these are the strongest three in terms of front row that you have. Tad Furlong offers a lot more around the field as well in terms of his distribution and his carrying abilities, whereas Wyn Jones has shown time after time during the Six Nations that he's not afraid to get his head in there and try and win a turnover at ruck time. So it's a nice balance to this front row, but predominantly they are strong scrummagers, which is what I think everybody will be talking about when it comes to this selection. Moving on to the locks, and obviously the obvious selection here is Captain Alun Wyn Jones. He has to be in there for me. He is going to be one true inspirational leader during this tour, and the players are going to look up to the likes of him to lead them through this test series, which is going to be absolutely brutal. An interesting selection, though, in the number 5 jersey. I've gone with Tide Burn. Now, there's been a lot of talk whether Tide Burn is going to start in the second row or the back row during this Lions tour. I personally think that it's a really good opportunity to bring him into the second row. He's a great line-out option. He's got confidence in his abilities around the field and successfully plays out in those wider channels, which we've seen that Gatland loves to do with his sides. We look at the 2017 tour to New Zealand, Faletau often playing out in those wide channels, where if you allow yourself to have a second row like Tide Burn, who not only does the donkey work, hitting rucks, carrying the ball, making yards every time he's got his hands on the ball, he also is a thinking rugby player as well and will find himself in those spaces, which will hopefully exploit the South African defence.
But I think Simmons offers something different, and I think he offers that, energetic pace off the back of scrums and rucks.
Yep, I had to do it. How on earth could I have mentioned that man so many times and not put him in my test side? For me, Sam Simmons has to feature in that back row. We talk a lot about how Gatland is going to play down in South Africa, and I think he is going to rely on his loose forwards on the fast surfaces in South Africa to get outside those wider defences and cause the South Africans problems. There is no one better to do this than Sam Simmons, I feel. So somewhere in that back row, he has to play. I wouldn't put a number on any of these players because I think that they could be completely interchanged throughout. I think, though, the way I've looked at it, I've gone Simmons at 6, Faletau at 8, and Tipuric at 7, with great skill sets, great abilities around the field, and all have the ability to win turnovers should they need to. Moving on to the halfbacks. Now, this was a little trickier for me, especially when it came to the scrum half position. I've gone with Conor Murray, and I think he is the best and strongest candidate out of the 3 scrum halves that have been selected to go on this tour. I think he offers a lot more in terms of his accuracy of pass and of his ability to get the ball away under pressure situations. Gareth Davis and Ali Price both have strong claims of how they could be in that Test 15, but I think due to the experience that he has of Lions tours, Conor Murray had to be the man at 9 for me. And then at 10, it's got to be Dan Biggar. He is the form 10 that's been selected to go on this tour at the moment. Pragmatic in his approach, and he will play the game with that level-headedness that I think is going to be needed, which is why I haven't gone for Finn Russell. But I think Biggar is definitely capable of leading this Lions pack around the field and to unlock this wider attack that the Lions have got so much potential in. Moving on to the centre partnership. Now, I've gone slightly controversial with this one in the selection of Owen Farrell. I know he hasn't been playing that well as of late internationally, but you think that the experience that he has of Lions tours, his leadership qualities. Now, I don't agree that he is currently the best man to captain England, but he has fantastic leadership qualities. And you see that if you watch any of the Lions documentaries, Owen Farrell is a loud voice within that camp. and he will be a player that will be fundamental. He also provides an extra element when it comes to goal kicking. Now, Bigger, we assume, will take on the goal kicking roles. We'll see it later on. I have another kicking option as well. But in terms of reliability, I think Owen Farrell is probably a more reliable goal kicker. So the reason he's been put in my side is that he would actually be the goal kicker in this side and allow Bigger just to play the game that he knows best, chasing after high balls, putting the ball in the right areas of the field, and putting players in the right areas to attack the South Africans. So that's why I've gone for Farrell at 12, and it had to be Robbie Henshaw at 13. He's had an outstanding season for Leinster and for Ireland, and he really has developed his game within the last few years, and he's a completely different player than we saw going on the 2017 tour to New Zealand. So this is the centre partnership I've gone with. Again, questions whether this will be the centre partnership that's selected, but I think this offers Gatland the most well-rounded approach. Moving into the back three. Now, I've gone for a balance of players that are good under the high ball. I've gone for players that can cover each other in key positions at fullback and move on to the wing. So I've gone with Josh Adams at 11, Anthony Watson at 14, and then Stuart Hogg at 15, overseeing everything from the back of the pitch. Now, I think all three of these players have a great kicking game, so that if it does resort to kick tennis at times during the tests, all three of these players are able to deliver the kicks that can put pressure on the South Africans. But also, I think all three of them are comfortable under the high ball. I know there have been questions over Stuart Hogg whether his ability to stay under the high ball and collect it comfortably will be good enough to take on the South Africans. But you look at just how much Stuart Hogg has improved over the last 18 months. Since he moved to Exeter, I think he has completely changed his game. And I think he is a vital cog in this Lions machine that will have to go into the test matches to beat South Africa. The wings are interesting because there have been a lot of specialist wingers selected for this tour. Lots of talk around Louis Rees-Zammit, Duhan van der Merwe, but I just think Anthony Watson and Josh Adams, they give you the most rounded approach that you will take into these test matches. So there's my 15. Let's have a look at who I've got on the bench. So looking at the forwards first, and an interesting name that's there, which a lot of you probably would have said, why is he not in the starting team? So I've gone with Rory Sutherland, Luke Cowan-Dickie, Andrew Porter, Maro Itoje, and Hamish Watson. Now, Maro Itoje is an interesting one. Why is he on the bench? For me, I think the versatility that Burn offers, he could potentially move into the back row later in the game should needs be. But also the offer that he has in terms of his line-out stealing ability later in the game, he's really something that's going to be valuable. Now, those reasons I've just said there could be a reason why you would put him in the starting lineup. But I think he's far more effective. And we saw in 2017, especially in the first test, he's far more effective coming off the bench, I feel, than he is starting at this current moment. Other notable mentions, Luke Cowan-Dickie definitely over Jamie George. Andrew Porter, because he offers that comfortability of both sides of the scrum and shoring up both sides at loose head and at tight head, although he has been primarily selected as a tight head. And Hamish Watson, he had to feature on my bench. He's had such a good Six Nations. He's been so good for Edinburgh over the last few years. And I just think the releasing a player like Watson into the field with 20, 25 minutes to go, give the South Africans all sorts of problems. So I've gone for a balanced approach to my bench, but also there are reasons behind each player, which I've just said. Let's have a look at the back replacements. Now, I had some trouble selecting the replacements in the backs. I think the one player that wasn't a problem for me was Finn Russell, and he has to be on the bench because he just offers that level of unpredictability that you're going to want going into the latter stages of the test match. Yes, if a game is tight, it's difficult to see where he would fit in that equation. But also, likewise, if a game is tight and the Lions are looking to win it late on in the game, and you've got the likes of Farrell on the field, then there is no harm whatsoever in throwing Finn Russell into the equation because, like we've seen so often with Finn Russell, he can spot an opportunity out of nowhere. And as long as the players are on the same wavelength as him, like we see when he plays for Racing, those opportunities will come to fruition and they will become fruitful. But it has to be that the players buy into the clause that if Finn Russell tries something, the players have to follow. Gareth Davis was the best of the rest in terms of the nines. I think the ability that he offers in terms of his sniping around the loose areas of the ruck, the ability to intercept the ball. We've seen so many times he's done it for Wales over the last few years. And I think he is just a really nuggety player that you have to have at some point during the test match, especially up against Faf de Klerk, who will do everything he can to wind up the opposition. Chris Harris, though, was the final option that I went for. Originally, I had Louis Rees-Zammit. Then I swapped it for Duhan van der Merwe. And then I thought, well, if it is tight and the test match is coming down to a few points, maybe the Lions are holding out a 3-point lead and South Africa are knocking the door, trying to find a way through, you will find nobody better to close out your defence in that squad than Chris Harris. His abilities to sewer up that defence, to keep a solid defensive line and to marshal the troops around him, he's absolutely a vital cog in the Scottish team. And it could well be that he is vital to the way that the Lions approach their defence. Obviously, with Gregor Townsend and Steve Tandy being within the coaching setup, they know what Chris has to offer. And it wouldn't surprise me in the slightest if he does make it onto the bench. Questions whether he makes it into the starting 15. But for me, I think at the bench is probably the best place that he could hope to be. So that is my Lions 15 and replacements for what I think will go into the first test against South Africa this summer. Again, all just my opinion. Taken various bits, thought about how Gatland's going to play the game, thought about players that are in form, thought about players that have previous test match experience at Lions level, and that's the squad that I've come up with. So let me know down in the comments if you think there's any players that I've got wrong and who you would replace them with. Because I think it's going to be a vitally important discussion, especially as we move towards the tour and that first test of who is going to be involved. So thank you very much for joining, everybody. Make sure before you leave that you like the video and you leave a subscription on the page if you haven't done so already. We are also over on Facebook at Ruck and Roll Rugby with 2 Ys at the end. Make sure you head over there and follow us there, as well as posts go out weekly, letting you know about content coming your way. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.